One of the things as an outdoor writer that we do get to do is we get to establish relationships with other outdoor writers. So I belong to Outdoor Writers Associations, there are several of them. And one of the founders of GOWA, the Georgia Outdoor Writers Association, GOWA, was Charlie Elliot. Now Charlie Elliot was a long-time writer, and he was also a mover and shaker in what became the Georgia Department of Natural Resources Game Management Division. Now Charlie started off in Georgia as a young guy, and he was born here in the state, and he hunted here, and he later became a forester and later worked with the National Forest Service in the West and came back to Georgia. We got involved with fish and game restoration in the state. He was in part responsible for early programs in the restocking of the wild turkey, which did not do well because he was trying to do this with domestic raised wild turkeys, and they found out later, thanks to work by the National Wild Turkey Federation and others, that what you had to do, it was trap real wild turkeys and put them in other places in the environment, and then they would prosper and grow. And this is a way you could get wild turkeys. You can't just pen raise wild turkeys and release them and have them do it all well. They don't. Now he was also very much involved in the reestablishment of the deer population in the state of Georgia. He got very, very much interested and involved in turkey hunting even as a young man. By the time I knew Charlie, he was getting old. He was already in his 90s, and he was not going to the nursing home quite yet, but within a few years would, and would not survive that terrible long afterwards. But Charlie told me some of his interesting tales, and so I'd like to tell you about his first turkey ever. Charlie was a young guy. Early on, though, he had got him what was then a Model 12 Winchester. Now, the Model 12 Winchester pump is a classic 12-gauge pump shotgun. And he saved up his pennies, and he got one. Now, they were expensive for him then. They sure were. So he figured, well, what can I take that would be worthy of this gun for a first hunt? He decided that that piece of game should be a wild turkey. And the only place there were wild turkeys in Georgia then were either down in the extreme southwestern part of the state or way up in the mountains. Charlie lived in the Piedmont area of the state, so he was closer to North Georgia. So he got his car and he went up to North Georgia and he went on a quest for turkeys. Now, North Georgia's roads at that time were absolutely terrible. And so these were rutted, muddy, dirt roads for the most part. And so he was rambling along this, and he stopped for no particular reason in this area, and he saw a house, and he said, well, maybe there's some turkeys up there. I'll go ask. So he went up, and he stopped at this fellow's house, and the fellow was out there fiddling around his barnyard. So he went out, and he talked to him, and the guy looked at him very, very strangely. First off, mountain people are sort of suspicious of strangers, as a rule. Now, the second thing going on was most mountain people made money any way they could during that period. And it was entirely likely that the way they made their money was not altogether legal. In short, he probably had a still up the creek. And so he looked very suspiciously at this young guy walking around and asking about hunting. He said, yeah, I bet you are. I bet you're scouting from a still is what I bet you're doing. Well, at any rate, they struck up a conversation, and he sort of decided that, well, no, this guy wasn't a revenue. He was straight. So he said, okay, I'll tell you what, yeah, we got a few turkeys, not many, but we got a few. And I'll tell you how to get there. Okay, you see this road behind the barn? You go up and you pass the chicken house, and you keep on going, and you come to a fork. And the creek forks, and there's a road up each fork. There are no turkeys up the left fork. So you don't go up the left fork. You go up the right fork. And you take the right fork, and you keep on going, and you'll see an old chimney where an old house site was. Now there's some privet hedge around there, and occasionally I've seen some turkeys feeding in that privet hedge. So you go up there and you take a look, and I don't know, maybe you'll find one. So Charlie says, well, this is as good a lead as he's got. So he walks up the trail, and sure enough, he gets to this fork in the creek, and he sees, yeah, the road is fairly well rutted and pretty frequently traveled going up the left-hand fork of the creek, but the right-hand fork of the creek does not have near so much traffic. So he goes up the right-hand fork of the creek just like he's told. So he gets up there and he goes up the creek, trump, 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 trump. He's walking slowly, looking and looking. And he then sees a little knoll, okay, and sure enough has an old stone chimney that's all fallen down, but he can see enough of it to say, yeah, it's an old pioneer chimney up there. There was once a house site up there. Yeah, they planted some privet hedge, and there's an old pear tree up there and some other stuff. So he went up there around there, and he was still creeping along the road and trying to not make any noise, although it was difficult. Muddy roads and rocks, and so he was trying to be as quiet as he could and approach stealthily, and he had his gun, and he had a shell in the chamber, and his hand on the safety, and I was like, and up flies this wild turkey, and it's a tom. So he swings on it, bang, shoots it, wing shoots it. Tom goes down, dead turkey. Oh, all right. Well, there's not much of this turkey hunting business. So he goes back and he takes the turkey and he puts it up and he puts it on the back and he goes tromping down the road. Back down to where the guy is. So the guy sees him coming and he's got his turkey. Well, he goes up and says, well, I'll be gone darned. I really didn't expect you to see anything, much less get one, but congratulations. So he reaches over and he gets him a gourd and he pulls this white stuff out of a bucket. And he hands him this gourd. Well, Charlie grew up in a pretty straight-laced family. And he's a young guy. He has never drunk anything in his life. And this guy hands him a gourd full of white lightning. He takes a good swallow of that and it chokes him to death and burns. That's the first liquor he's ever had in his life. What? No. So he thanks him. Yeah, thank you. He makes it on back down to his truck and then proceeds to go back home. No, ain't nothing to this turkey hunting business. You just go up and flush one, shoot one. I mean, bang. That's all there is to it. Well, Charlie was to find out there was considerable more to it. It was 12 years before he was to shoot his next turkey. By this time, he had become fairly well established in the forestry industry and was starting, I would suspect, to work for the state of Georgia at that time, at least in some capacity. And so he was starting his way up the ladder there. And so, wow. That was Charlie Elliott's first turkey. And so the Model 12 got it done. It sure did. And he used that Model 12 for as long as he lived. He never sold it. He still had it when he died. It was his favorite gun.
I take most of my turkeys with muzzleloading guns, and in case you wondered what happened to them, we eat them. Among my prize-winning books are Extreme Muzzleloading, Backyard Deer Hunting, Crossbow Hunting, and Practical Bow Fishing, and these are available as softcover and e-books. I have an 8-book e-book series out for 2013-14, including Hunting with Muzzleloading Shotguns and Smoothbore Muskets, which has turkey hunting stories in it. Photos are from the Charlie Elliot Wildlife Center located near Mansfield off I-20. Now the facility has rooms, conference facilities, a discovery center, and annual programs for adults and kids. The adjoining WMA has shooting ranges, stocked fishing lakes, and hunts for deer, turkey, and small game, as well as trails. For information on my books, blogs, and more than 300 videos, go to my website at www.hoveysmith.com. Good hunting and good eating from the outdoors. Goodbye and God bless.